Hi, welcome to Hard Tech. My name is Julius. Today I want to show you how you can add AWS SDK to your Node.js project. The AWS SDK for Node.js is a collection of libraries that allows developers to interact with Amazon Web Services using Node.js. The SDK provides language-specific APIs and libraries that simplify the complexities of interacting with AWS offerings, making it easier for developers to leverage the power and capability of AWS within their programs. I have to say the Node.js package may include functionalities which can help you create resources from your Node.js app. However, it must be noted that if you want to build infrastructure or have an infrastructure as code solution, you have to leverage other tools like Terraform or CloudFormation. With that said, let's begin. For the project structure, you can see I'm starting with an empty directory. So that one is called AWS SDK tutorial, basically a folder, an empty folder. In here, we have to first initialize the project. So as usual, we go to our terminal, we bring up a new terminal, and then we do npm init, and then we can do dash 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 yes. So this is to initialize the project with default configurations. So we will wait for this. It is done. Now we can look at what we have. We now have a package.json file in here. We can see that we don't have any dependencies over here. So we have to add the AWS SDK dependency for Node.js. Okay, so in order to do that, we come to the terminal and then we do npm install or npm I and AWS SDK. So this is going to install the AWS SDK for Node.js. So we are going to wait for that one. So now that that is done, you can see that we have the SDK added to our package.json file. Now we also have to be able to authenticate to AWS using the SDK. So there are a couple of ways you can do this. So we can do this by passing the AWS credential to our environment variable. And then we can also do this through shared credentials. So basically this is going to be a file that is on your system. Okay, and then when you run your application, the AWS SDK is going to pick the credentials from that file. You can generate new tokens using the AWS CLI if you want to use the shared credential approach, which is the file on your system. Usually it is on drive C. And then we can also use EC2. So for example, if your app is going to run on an EC2, you can be able to use the IAM roles for EC2 to grant access to the SDK for you to be able to authenticate to your AWS environment. So that is if you're using EC2. So you just do that through IAM role. And then you can also use temporary security credentials when you are leveraging AWS STS. So basically, AWS STS is AWS Security Token Service. So this approach is very useful when you are doing things like cross accounts and then federation accounts. Okay, so let us install a new package. So we're going to call that one is .env. So npm .env. Okay, so this is going to give us npm install .env. So this is going to give us a package which we are going to use to serve our environment variable. So basically the variables we've stored inside our .env file, this is going to be passed to the application. So that's what this package does. Moreover, if you're using, I think, Node version 20 and above, I hear this feature is already baked into Node, so you can easily, write your .env file and then pick the secrets from the .env file. You don't need a package for that. Okay, so basically that's the purpose for this file, and we are installing this file because we'll be using the first approach I talked about. So that is to create the environment variable file, and then so let me just create that one here. So we can call that one .env. Yeah, and then we are going to paste the secrets into this particular file. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that in a bit. Okay, so everything is looking good now. Let us just create another file called index.js. This is where we're going to write the logic of our code. So index.js, the logic basically. Yep, everything looks good now. Now I want us to do something else. As a requirement, right? If we want to be able to use the AWS SDK successfully, we'll have to use we have to get the credentials, and then that credentials can be obtained from a role, sorry, from a user, right? So we'll just switch to the AWS console. Then I show you how to create the user and also how to obtain the credentials needed for your app to run. Okay. All right. So here we are. in the AWS console. So you will have to log into your console, right, in order to create these resources here. So in my console, you can see the resources. So we have IAM S3 and then EC2. You can search for any resource you want using this search. So if you type S3, you can see S3 buckets, S3 glacier, and all that. Yeah. So that is it. Basically, there's a console, and then we want to create two resources, right? We want to create a user resource, and then we want to create an S3 bucket. Okay. So in order to do that, we just click on IAM, and then we come to users. Inside the users, we have to create a new user, and then you have to give it a name, right? So I will call mine maybe AWS SDK, and then Node. Okay, I think it uses underscore, right? So AWS SDK, and then Node, right? So I'll go ahead and then create this user, and then you can decide to, check any additional features you may need. So let's see, I don't need any of this. I just need everything to be default, right? And then I click on create user. Now, after we create our user successfully, right, there's another thing we may need. Okay, no, it's not we will actually need, but we'll get to that in a bit, right? So you can see that the user is created, last activity is loading, and some other things. On the user, you can also see MFA. So if you want to, allow MFA, you're allowed to do all that. So we'll click on this. We need the credentials for this particular user. So you can come to security credentials, and then we need the access keys, right? Because the access keys is what we need for our app to run. Okay, for us to be able to authenticate into the AWS SDK basically. So we can just come here and then click on create access key, and then you choose what is your use case. So if it is for the command line interface, you take that, local code, whatever, applications, third party, whatever it is. But I am just using it for local code, right? So I can just select this one, and then yeah, we can read more about that, and then you click on confirm, then create, right? It is asking for a description. In this case it is optional, so we can just go ahead and then create it. Now you see that after you create the access key, you have this access key ID, right? And then you also have this access key secret. You can also download it in CSV form, so I'll go ahead and download this. Okay, now that that is downloaded, we can open it and see what we have in there. So it's going to open up. The reason why I'm showing you what we have in there, okay, is because like this is just a tutorial, right? So it doesn't matter. Moreover, I also delete the account. But in your case, if you download this particular details, make sure you keep it safe, because it is actually a secret, right? So yeah, just be mindful of that. So in this case, I just wanted to show you how it looks like. So inside the CSV, basically it is the access key ID that you have, and then the access key secret. Okay, so that's the same thing we are going to use in our that's the same thing we are going to use in the AWS SDK for our Node app. Here in the console again, we have already created the IAM user. So we have our user here. Now we want to create the AWS S3 bucket, right? So we come in here, we go to S3, and then you can see that there's nothing here. So we can just click on create a bucket. Then we have to select the region and then give the bucket a name, right? In our case, I want to call it AWS SDK, and then Node. Okay. I don't know if that bucket is already taken, but let's see. Create a bucket. All right, it's already taken. So we can do tutorials. Tutorials. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that worked. Okay, so we have created a bucket called AWS SDK Node tutorial. So inside here, you can see that it is empty. There are no objects in this bucket. So that is it. We've been able to create the two resources that we need. Now let's just get back to the IDE. Back to the IDE. In here, the only thing that I've done is to add these variables to the .env file. So basically, these are the variables that we need to for our SDK to be able to authenticate and then get access to the AWS cloud resources. These variables are AWS access key ID and then AWS secret access key. Now I want to mention that these variables are secrets, right? So they have to be kept as secrets. In this tutorial, I'm definitely going to delete like the user account and then everything that has to be deleted. So there's no problem showing that with you, showing that to you. And then I also want you to see how it looks like and then understand what is going on. So that is why I'm revealing everything. But it's supposed to be a secret, so you have to keep it a secret. Nobody has to get access to this unless the person is um, authorized to have access to. So you have to keep these variables or these values as secrets. Yeah. So these variables also have to be defined just like the way they are, right? So if you change the name, eh, the app will not work. Basically, the SDK will not work properly. So make sure that the name is the way it is over here. You can also check more on the documentations to properly get these things right. And then, so the access key ID, you just give the access key ID to it, and then the secrets, you just pass the secret value. All right. Let's get to index.js. Now, inside the index.js, we want to be able to use the SDK now. So we can do const, and then we will say AWS, and then that will be require. Then we'll say AWS SDK. The next thing we want to do is to create an instance of S3. So we can say S3 equals. Now we use the AWS class, so AWS, so new AWS, right? And then we do dot, and then we'll say S3. So this is going to create an S3 object. So if we have done everything correctly, if we do S3 dot, we should be able to see all these functions, right? So these are the functions that are on the S3 object, which will help us to be able to communicate to the cloud resource, right? So we can be able to manage and communicate, right? So we can see delete, create objects, and so on, copy objects. Yeah, we have lots of functionalities here, basically. But what I want us to do is to list the buckets. So we can say list buckets, right? So we can see that here. And if we look at the list buckets function, right, it takes a callback. So this is the callback. This is how it looks like. The signature basically. So it has two parameters, right? The error and then the data. So that's the same thing we're also going to do here. So inside this function, we pass this callback, and then it should have error and data. So we'll say error, and then we'll say data. Now, if there is an error, we want to log the error. So this is going to log the error and then the stack, right? The next thing we want to do is to log the data if there is no error. So log data. Okay, everything is looking good. So we create a new terminal and then we run node index. Okay, so this is an error that I was expecting. So I just want to show you or explain things a little bit better. So inside here, we are logging the error, just like we said, right? So we have message, missing credentials in config. Okay, so basically it cannot get these credentials from the .env file. The reason why it cannot access these credentials is because we are not using the .env package, this package that we downloaded. So we first have to configure the .env package. So this is how you do that. So at the top, you can do require, and then you import .env. After that is imported, you can do config. Awesome. Let's run it again. All right, another error. Yep. So this one is saying access denied, right? That's the code. And then, yep, access denied. That's the error message. So when I was creating the user, I was saying that there's another thing we have to look at. So that is what I want to talk about right now. So after you have created a user resource, now that user resource has to be able to communicate to whatever resource, like the other resource you want it to be able to communicate to. So in this case, the user credentials we used, right? It is not able to communicate with the S3 resource in the cloud. Okay, so in order for the user resource to be able to communicate with S3, we have to allow that permission. You get it? So that's the next thing we are going to look at. We are going to look at how to create the permission and then assign it to the user. Here in the console, we go to IAM or IAM. We go to users, and then we go to AWS SDK node. Then we go to add permissions. Okay, so let's add a permission. We can say we should add a user to a group. So basically what we are doing is we are going to create a group, and then after we are done creating the group, we add the user to the group, and then we add that permission to the group that we have created. You get it? So any user resource in that group should have access to the same permissions. That makes sense. So we go to next. Let's create a group. We'll say Node.js group, and then we want to search for the permission. So we can say S3 full access. So this is to grant the AWS. This is to grant any user in this particular group full access to AWS S3, right? So we create a user group now. Oh, invalid characters. So let's see, underscore. All right. We are now going to select the group, and then we click on next. Add permission. That is it. So we now have one group, Node.js group, and then we have a user assigned to that group. Awesome. Back to the console. Let us run this again, but before that I just want to add console.clear at the top. So console.clear, that's just to clear the console for us. All right, now see what we've got here. So we've been able to make the request, and then we are listing all the buckets. Is that not great? See, now I've made changes to the project. So the only thing I've done is I've added 3 new files. So sample data, which consists of lorem ipsum text. So we have lots of that here, and then we have plant.jpg and then flower.jpg, right? So these are the 3 files that I've added to the project. I've added these files because I want to upload them to S3 so that we can see how that is done. But before that, I want to show that some of these functions, so for example, list buckets, they have the promised version. So you'll be able to use your async await if that is the approach you want to go with, to handle things asynchronously. So you can create a function, an async function. So we call that one list buckets, and then it is async, so we call it so, and then so we have that one here, and then we can do try catch, and in here we can say const data, and then we do await, then we say s3 dot list buckets, right? Then we do another dot, then we say promise. So when we call that, that's one will activate, or that one will use the promise version. So we can then log data. Now if we catch an error, s3 list buckets, am I doing something wrong here? Oh yeah, that one. And then log error. Okay, so this is the same thing as the first one. just that this one we are using async await. So we have our async, there's the function. We do a try, we list the bucket using the promise, we get the data, we log the data. The next thing, if we catch an error, we want to log that one out. Yeah, so we can comment this one out, and then fingers crossed this should work. So list buckets, we are calling the function here. If we run this, awesome, we have this one in the console, so we are logging it right, just like we did here. It's just that this time we are using the promise form. Now the next thing is uploading a file from local disk to the AWS bucket. So to do that, we can create a function. We'll call that function const list file, sorry, upload file to S3. Okay, so I'm done writing out the function. I'm just going to explain what it does. So we have upload file to S3, very clear. Then the next thing we have to do is to get a file from um, our storage, right? So that is from our hard disk or wherever it is. So read file sync. This is going to return the file, and then inside the function, right? For the function, it takes the file path as a parameter, and then it also takes the bucket name. So the name of the bucket we want to upload to, in our case, was AWS um, AWS SDK node tutorials, right? So that's the bucket name we'll specify. So after we've gotten the file, the AWS S3 dot upload, it takes a params, okay, and then it also has a callback. So you can have a look at it over here, params, and then it has a callback. Okay, the callback can be undefined, right? So in this case, what we are doing is we are passing these two arguments, which is the params and then the callback we have over here. The callback looks like the first one we did over here. So the first parameter is an error. The second one is the data itself. So if there is an error, you want to log the error. There is if there is data, you want to log data, right? Now back to the params. The params you need it to send a request, right? So basically it contains some data. It has the bucket name. So we specify the bucket name as bucket, and then the key we assign it to the path, sorry, the base name of the file. So we use the path package, right? So which comes with Node.js. So we did path and dot base name. So this is going to return the base name from the file path, and then we assign it to key. So what we are doing over here is the key is going to be the name of the file that we store on the name of the file. It is going to be the name that will be used to store the file on the AWS S3 bucket. So for example, if the name of our file is plan.jpg and then we want to change the name, you can change the name as at the key part. But in our case, I just want to keep the name as is. So in this case, if I use path.base name and then the file path, it is going to just keep the base name, right? So in this case, it is going to be plan.jpg, and then the file is going to be assigned to the body. So basically, the file that we read from the disk is what we are sending to AWS. So we are going to change, I'm just going to comment this line out, and then we are going to call this function now. So upload file to S3. The first one is the file part, so I just do that, and then plan.jpg, right? And then the next thing is to the bucket name, right? So AWS SDK, if I can remember clearly, and then Node tutorials. All right, let's give this a try. So node index. Oh, nice. I think we've got something right. So over here we can see that it's uploaded a file. We have bucket name, and then this is the key, plan.jpg, and then the location, right? Yeah, it looks good. It looks good. Let us do the same for all. Let us just check first. Let us check inside our console if it has been uploaded. Now inside the console, if we go to S3, the bucket is loading. Okay, now we can see plan.jpg, right? Uploaded. Let us try the other ones. Now we want to upload the other files too, so let's see. We want to upload sample data .txt, and then we also want to upload flower.jpg. All right, let us run this. Send in. Okay, seems like it's sent. Okay, let us look at the storage. Okay, so in here in the storage, let us refresh. Okay, now we have some data, right? So we have flower.jpg, we have plant, we have sample data. So yeah, there you have it, folks. This is how you go about it. So we have tried the list buckets, and then we've tried to upload files to S3 using the Node.js SDK for AWS. That's it. Thank you. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Thank you.